We can start. So let me start by welcoming everybody. Thanks for being here at our webinar. This is one of the several we are doing in this period, and many others will come until the end of the year. And we are thinking also to something new also for 2021. But okay, today we are 2020. Let's and we have today one specific topic. So welcome to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, depending whenever you are. Here we are, myself and Tino. Tino is the main speaker, and just want to I know him since many years, 20-25. Don't want even to count, otherwise I would recognize that I'm quite old. And Tino is one of the most experienced guy I know in functional safety. And today's webinar is on a specific subject of functional safety, which is safety manual. So we will go through these details on safety manual. But before to do that, let me have the chance to say something about GMI, who is offering this live webinar. I want to give you just some brief information about the webinar. Webinar is going on with the main topics, safety manual. At the end of the presentation, at the end of the webinar, we will have a question and answer section. During the webinar, you have the chance to raise questions through the question and answer box. And another important thing, you will receive copy of the slides we are going to present. As well, you will have the chance to see again the webinar, because we are storing that in our GMI YouTube channel. So you have the chance to view this webinar as well as all the other webinar which was done in the past. So a few words about GMI. GMI is an Italian company, but present worldwide, let me say. We have our production units here in not far from Monza, Milano area. What we are doing field interface with the focus on two aspects of safety. It's functional safety, which is the topic, one of the topic of our webinars and today's topic, as well as intrinsic safety. And we have also other webinars. If you go to our website, you will see we have several subjects we are covering, including intrinsic safety aspects. You find the GMI in many automation package from DCS, ESD, fire and gas, and in many sectors like chemical, petrochemical, oil and gas, and so on and so on. Dealing with safety, of course, quality for us is one of the most important things. So we have we have quality. We are taking care of quality in the production process, in selection of components, in testing, everything which is going to be produced by GMI before to leave the factory is 100% tested, of course. We feel the responsibility of our products saving human life, environment, assets of company, and so on. So quality for us is one of the main focus. This is just a range of product we deliver. We are talking about intrinsic safe barrier, safety relays, isolator, power supply, as well as multiplexer. And all these items either are functional safety related or intrinsic safety, or covered by intrinsic safety, or both of them. We have as well as heart multiplexer, surge protector, and we have customized termination board to connect to the several DCS and ESD or PLC system, the main brand, of course. And we have also in the company dedicated group of persons dealing with functional safety and dealing with intrinsic safety. We are delivering training. Tino will say something about training and the training program we are doing for functional safety, and something similar is going to be implemented also for intrinsic safety. I said we are in Italy, but we are located worldwide. And of course, we have a list of customers which are ranging from system vendor to EPC contractor, OEM, and of course, end user. And being installed in several countries, all our products are covered by the certificates which are necessary to be installed locally. So we have a wide range of certification. Good. Let me leave the speech to Tino. So thanks for being here again. So Tino, I leave you the speech, and I will, as usual, interrupt you whenever there is some questions which make sense, or I will interrupt you in the proper moment. And so let's go ahead with the presentation. So you should, or I should release
the control
if I'm able to. No.
No.
Are you able? Are you in the position to get it? Because
I still got the message Mauro is controlling my screen, which I don't mind if you don't move it.
No, okay. I try. I avoid to move it.
Okay. All right. Well, so topic for today is safety manual and also functional safety manual. As Mauro was saying, it's a very specific topic. We have done this webinar before this year. So this is now the second time in 2020. And if you have any additional questions, those that already sent in on the pre-registration have been captured. But if you have questions coming up today, you can just fill them in the Q&A box. Mauro will keep an eye on them, because usually I will not monitor all the questions that are coming in. But if I can, I will also, of course, try to answer. So before we actually start, I will go back to the roots of the safety manual. And the roots was new in April 2010 by the edition number 2 of the IEC 61508. And as some of you may know, the IEC 61508 is mainly used by the manufacturers of equipment such as GMI. And suppose that they are trying to achieve a recognition to safety, then they will try to refer to the normative parts of the standards, which is part 1, 2, 3, and 4. There are 7 parts in total, but part 5, 6, and 7 are the informative section from the IEC standard. And what was new by the edition 2 when it was released in 2010 in April, that every single supplier or vendor that wants to claim that they comply to the 61508 shall provide you as an end user, you as the client who is buying this product, the manufacturer shall supply you with a safety manual. So the safety manual is a normative requirement which comes out of part 2 and part 3, whereas part 2 of the IEC 61508 standard means that's the hardware section. That means the hardware developers from the manufacturers shall follow all the normative requirements from that part, which is the hardware section. And there are items in there that will explain to the developers for hardware on how to control the failures and how to avoid making systematic failures. Equally for the software section of the standard, which is part number 3, that's the same let's say, strategy behind the normative requirements, that the developer for software, for firmware of a device shall also follow very strict rules, which we are actually discussing in the standard. We call this the rigorousness of design. How good is your quality of your design towards both hardware and software? And you may have recognized that since April 2010 on some certificates. Now lately, let's say since 2013, 14, 15 onwards, almost all manufacturers are claiming next to their SIL level will also claim now systematic capability. And the systematic capability is a recognition of a qualitative measurement on how and what quality have they used in their design for hardware and software. So on the first bullet here, and you will get a copy of those slides. I don't know, I cannot remember if Mauro mentioned, he made it. So that's now the second time that I will repeat him. But you will get a copy of these slides in an Acrobat in a PDF version, will be sent also to your email address. So the first bullet here is saying a supplier, which I call the manufacturer here, shall provide you with this manual, and they have to give you some specific information. And the purpose of this webinar is to give you some of those bullet points. What information can you find back in a safety manual? In both the hardware section, part 2, and the software section, part 3 of the IEC standard, if you would go into Annex D, which is also a normative annex, they have like 2 or 3 pages of very specific items that one by one is described what should be the content inside a safety manual. What is now the content, or what could you now find in terms of information for a safety manual? Well, the safety manual needs to describe to you, as an example, the functional specifications of the safety function being performed. I'm going to give you an easy example. I'm going to give you a complex example. It's always easy to start with the easy example because it's very simple to explain. When you have a GMI safety interposing relay with a normally open contact, that means the safety function that will be performed with that type of device or that type of subsystem will be open the contact in terms to achieve your safety function. So classically, this normally open contact would be used as an interposing relay between the safety PLC controller and between the load in the field, between your solenoid, and enable to de-energize your solenoid coil or the let's say the current to the solenoid. They will open the contact, so the safety function on such a simple interposing relay will clearly identify that they will remove the power, enable to generate the safety or execute the safety function of that safety relay. Same for your solenoid. If your solenoid would be a safety classified solenoid or compliant solenoid, I should call it, well, then the solenoid shall describe that when you are moving the power, then the mechanical construction inside that solenoid should be able, if it was a fail to open or a fail to close, to go to the position where the safety function was designed for. Now, a more complex is where you go to configurable systems. Like if you, for instance, are using a safety PLC from vendor X, well, that vendor X cannot know how you will configure your system up front. So when those safety vendors of safety PLCs, which are configurable in functionality, are describing the safety manual, they are describing the safety manual functions per module. And then they will clearly identify that based on your configurations between in to outputs, that part of the functional safety needs to be described not in the safety manual of the vendor, but that will be described in the functional safety manual for the system integrator / for the system manufacturer who actually configure the in to out. So second bullet, of course, in the safety manual of the subsystems from the manufacturer, we have to see exactly what hardware revision and what software revision, read between brackets, what firmware revisions this safety manual has been made for. I give you another challenge in the market. Let's assume that you buy 100 field transmitters from one vendor. And this 100 field transmitters are all from the same vendor, the same model number, etc. Make sure that all the firmwares and all these 100 field transmitters are all from the same revision number. If not, You may have a, let's say, specific problem when it comes to proving your safety function, also in terms of security towards the firmware inside that device. That's one example. What I'm trying to say is that when you are buying 100 transmitters, I do not expect you will get 100 different safety manuals, but make sure you have a very clear record of every specific model number from hardware and or software. The third bullet is constraints and or assumption on its use. I go back in history. Before the safety manual was normative required in 2010, many, let's say, safety vendors of equipment, they were already having a kind of a paper called certificate. And certificate was coming from a specific accreditation office. And they were claiming that their device was suitable to be used in a SIL 1, SIL 2, or in a SIL 3 domain. And I clearly say they were proving it was suitable or compatible. None of the vendors are proving it is certified. They have a paper called certificate and they make a statement. And what I'm trying to tell you now is that that statement is always related to a test report. But the test reports, although they're forming an integral part of a piece of paper called certificate, were often not being provided to the end users or to the people who are using that equipment. Now, those limitations or those constraints who were often being mentioned in the test report were never being filtered, that they were never coming towards, let's say, the end users, and that needs to be also filtered down in your safety manual. For every single safety function, you will have things like, for instance, hardware fault tolerance, simple expression, how many dangerous faults can you tolerate and still achieve your safety functions. You will have type A or type B, because that classification will be of interest if you are choosing a road 1H, where you will have to see, as per the table of the 61508 standard, how many HFTs do I need in able to achieve my SIL level. In that safety manual, we also look for all the failure data. For those who are more experienced here in the listening to the webinar, you see here there's abbreviations SD, SU. For those who do not know what that means a safe detected failure, a safe undetected failure, danger detected failure, that's the DD, and the DU. The DU are the danger undetected. Those are the ones you will have to find out during your proof test. Those who have a D at the end means for diagnostics. That means they were detected by diagnostics. They will be detected for you. There is nothing you have to do for that. And the SU, although you will not have to test, you will find out, because when you trip your units, you will know that you had a safe failure for no reason, the nuisance trip, the spurious trips, etc. Information about diagnostic coverage and the intervals, information about the proof test coverage and intervals, because every manufacturer has a certain liability that comes out of their liability calculation on the product, and they may tell you how frequent, how often you have to test the system to a position that you know that the safety function is still working. Also items in there like systematic capability. That's the systematic capability. Again, that's the quality of your design of your products, and the software configuration and the related information. And to go specific now on one topic called the software compliance devices, or let's say the software firmware inside the subsystem, there's something very specific on the safety manual, because the safety manual in Annex D in part number 3 of the 61508 is talking about the safety function integrity. That means the integrity of the safety function itself that is achieved by firmware functionality or software functionality. That means the functions, the constraints, and the evidence for every single element shall be precisely and completely described. And I wonder how many of you have seen this in reality, that the safety manual of such a device is giving you specific information on what to take care of. That means things like the attributes of an element. You can have an element compliant device inside your subsystem, shall be defined what the integrator shall consider during the application of a hardware and or software combined safety functions. What I'm trying to say is here, there are some specific limitations, instructions coming in that type of section that you as an end user, when you're combining two instruments together, it doesn't necessarily mean when you buy two SIL 2, let's say, elements, that all of a sudden you can claim a higher SIL with that. That means you need to look for specific information towards the compliance of software related functions. Can I go into a higher SIL? Yes or no? Items like configuration, revisions, and backward compatibilities. There is a whole lot to do that if you have a existing system in your installation and the vendor is informing you for whatever reason that there is a firmware upgrade available that he recommends that you should upgrade. That means most likely they have found some issues with the previous release, and or maybe the current release which you are today using is no longer in the longer term being supported because maybe they lost the access to this type of CPU which they are using on this particular PCB board or printed circuit board. Those are all kind of examples which I'm just dropping to you out of my mind, which could be the reason why it could be interesting to have a look at this. And then the justification evidence that every safety function is in compliance with supporting parts of the IEC 61508. In a nutshell, in a summary, I can tell you that the summarized version of all these items which I tell you here will most likely be judged by an expert judgment, and they will give that recognition into a result called systematic capability to a certain SIL level. And see that Mauro came back online because we have a poll question coming up, and Mauro will launch the poll for you.
Yes, we would like to have your feedback on this question. I think you can read the question, Tino, or
yes, I will read the question. So it's like a multiple choice, and there's only one selection possible. And we ask you here the question: if a manufacturer like GMI is supplying a safety product that is compliant to the 61508, what shall they provide to you? Shall they provide you A, with a third-party certificate of IEC 61508 compliance, B, with a safety manual explaining that product which they supply you as per the 61508, C, a SIL certificate with a test report of that certificate, which I was explaining as an integral part of a SIL certificate, D, all of the above, E, none of the above. I think I was running out of options, so I just thought E, none of the above. I think that's a very simple one to understand. And we just wait a few more clicks.
Yes.
So do us a favor, it doesn't cost you money. You're not losing face. That means even if it is totally wrong what you say, it doesn't matter. It's just for me to have a feedback on the people in the group. What do you think would be a right answer to this question? And I see.
Shall I end the poll? You know?
Yes, you can.
Okay, because we collected some polling, and let's share the result to all.
Okay, and the result is showing that the majority, which is a scary part here, but the majority is all selecting all of the above. And my answer to that is, unfortunately, that is not true, and that's not correct. And that's very, 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 very common wrong answer, because we have this question also in other webinars, and it's somewhere a myth in the industry. And I think when I was a very young engineer many years ago, because I'm not so young anymore, I had the same impression that when someone talked to me about a safety device, the first thing my question would be, do you have a certificate? And without a certificate, I would not even believe it. Now, unfortunately, after all these years of wisdom and all these years of working in functional safety, which is more than 20 years for me, a certificate by the IEC standard is not even known. We do not know the word certificate, not in the IEC 61508, not in the IEC 61511. We don't care less. We don't care in the safety committees of the functional safety standards about the certificate. What do we care is about the quality of a component, and we will describe in the IEC standards how this component should be actually being developed, should be engineered, should be used, should be maintained. All of that will all be described in both standards 61508 and 61511. What is true, that in the 61508, for a SIL 3 compliant device. So listen to what I said. I didn't say for a SIL 3 certified device, because that does not exist. But we do have a statement when a SIL 3 compliant device is saying it is complying to the standard called 61508. Well, for a SIL 3, an independent organization shall make an assessment. And the assessment is kind of an expert judgment exercise to that component. That can be a theoretical assessment, that can be a practical expert judgment assessment. Both of them are both allowed by the 61508, and for SIL 3 shall be done by independent organization. And that's the only way where we see today that all those accreditation offices around the world bringing out all these certificates. The title of the paper is called certificate. But when you start to read that certificate, it will say that that accreditation office has made an assessment towards a certain SIL, and they make a confirmation to say that that device is compliant to be used to a SIL 1, SIL 2, or to a SIL 3. So answer number C, a SIL certificate with a test report is only driven by the marketing between the, let's say, the competition between the vendors, but not by the IEC committees. What is required by the IEC 61508, that was here the question, clearly, is a safety manual. They do not require a third-party certificate, nor a SIL certificate, nor a test report, but they will require normatively a safety manual. So B, which at least 20% of the group here today, so 20% picked the right answer. The rest, unfortunately, did not pick the right answer. Okay, Mauro, stop sharing and let's continue. That's here an example of a safety manual. So many manufacturers will mix their instruction product manuals together with safety manual, but at the end, the safety manual is the only terminology or definition by the IEC 61508 which is normative required to supply to you. Okay, the safety manual here will give you items, and I took here a relay apparently, which is a safety relay from GMI, how to install the device, how to operate the device, how to maintain the device, which is very important towards safety, because for maintenance, they may give you some advice, what type of maintenance in terms of proof testing, in terms of proof testing coverage, in terms of the interval of the proof test. That will all come out of the safety manual from the manufacturer. Very simple things like installation instructions, like this particular picture here of this relay doesn't have some air ducts for some airflow, for some cooling, but there are some other models where you have to respect the minimum distance between the top and the bottom of the relay with your cable ducts in your marshalling cabinets, etc. All simple items should be also described in the safety manual. The failure data, because the safety specialist will need that, how to calculate the availability of the product. The useful life, very important. Useful life, as the word is saying, what is the lifetime of use of such a particular component? By memory, such type of components like or devices which we see here on the picture, like in GMI, are in the range from 20 to 25 years, even longer. But you may have a mechanical product in the field, depends on the amount of strokes of your valve, etc., etc. So the useful life is very important to keep a record of, because you have the mission time on your loops versus your useful life. And I think I've got somewhere a slide where I give you some more information on that, which is actually, I thought it was in here, but it's probably coming later. So normative requirement, and I'm jumping now to another safety standard, which is called the IEC 61511, which is the application-specific standard for the process industry. And the process industry, I think I've got a slide with some more data. What is the process industry now including? Now, what is now normative required by the IEC 61511? And for those who have read the IEC 61511, will see that in the definition of the abbreviation, which is in section 3 of the 61511 part 1, they call it functional safety manual next to safety manual. And there are unfortunately too many engineers still today in the year 2020, and the standard is out in Europe since 2016, in the US since 2018. There are too many people that have no idea what does it mean, a functional safety manual, because this is not the same as the individual safety manual from the manufacturer. You may need the individual safety manual from the manufacturer, obviously, to get all your data together, but we are talking here about the functional safety manual of your safety instrumented system. And if you think about it, simply speaking, the IEC 61511 is oriented, or is actually dedicated towards the application-specific industry for the process industry like oil and gas, chemicals, petrochemicals, food and beverage, and pharmaceutical. But the manufacturer component or device or subsystem, that can be used in any type of application. So that standard here, 61511, is requiring that you are thinking about the functionality of your safety instrumented function and of your safety instrumented system, and that functional safety manual shall provide you information that will define on how that device has been configured, has been wired, has been used inside the complete functionality of your safety system. So the safety manuals individually of subsystems will be an input coming from the manufacturers. For every compliant device, as I told you, a normative required since 2010 is you shall have a safety manual. And your functional safety manual from your 61511 could be a generic standalone document, which in reality it almost never is. It's a combination of all kinds of documentation. And my advice will be later on, the more documents you will have, the worse you will be able to actually keep a clear track and record of revision, etc., etc. So it would be great in the ideal world, you have only one safety manual per safety instrumented system, but in reality, I'm afraid that's also not really achievable. The definition of the functional, the word functional, is trying to trying to deviate from a definition from the 61508. So the 61511 talks about functional safety manual, whereas the 61508 talks about safety manual. So they skip that word function. And the functional safety manual purpose, as I already told you, is a description customized per, let's say, the way you have configured, the way you have designed your system. But the aim is to help at the end of the day, the field engineer, the maintenance engineer, or the operator engineer, or the end user to ensure that the systematic safety integrity will be maintained throughout the useful life and the mission time of that specific safety integrity level for that specific safety function. And the safety function, we still call this here, the second bullet, your safety instrumented function. So in fact, it will be a customized document that the manufacturer of the components cannot make. It has to be made by the engineer or the department, or let's say the system integrator or the system manufacturer who combines those items together. But if you think about it, if an engineering contractor is building a turnkey project and they are providing the turnkey, let's say, documentation also, well, functional safety manual will be part of your turnkey documentation. Because as being a, let's say, engineering contractor delivering a solution to an end user, you may have used maybe 50 different vendors. And those 50 different vendors will all play a different role towards your safety functions. Well, the only one that can describe how everything is linked together will be the person who has designed it and who has built that product. And that, in that case here, in my example, is the EPC contractor that will have to describe this as part of the, let's say, scope of supply in his documentation. That is where functional safety manual will certainly belong. Because the classical excuse now since 2016 in Europe, and it will also be most likely the same in the US, is people are trying to get rid of their, let's say, responsibilities. Oh, that's not my duty, that is someone else's duty. Well, it is the duty for the person who is combining those components together. Because the end user, at the end of the year, the end user or the operating company will have to live with the nightmare that the person, whoever it is is designing for them. That means that we need to help those end users that at the end of the day, they know how to actually modify some loops. They know how to work with the loops. They know how to maintain the loops. That should be described in your functional safety manual. And the recommendation is to identify, for instance, a typical per loop. I give you a classical example. I have done a safety manual, function safety manual, excuse me, a function safety manual for a project which was dedicated for an end user, and the end user had a specific unit where they had 1 out of 1 loops, 1 out of 2 loops, 2 out of 3 loops. So we described like templates, like typical per type of loop. And then we make like a matrix where specific per loop, we have additional information, because every single loop can have different proof test intervals, safety data, because we have used maybe different material. So we don't want to reinvent every time the same wheel for a 1 out of 2 loop. We have like make one dedicated, very detailed 1 out of 2 function safety manual with a matrix link to all specific safety loops. That is how we solve that for this one client. And then an example here of safety implemented function will be, as already mentioned, assume that, and all these 55s are from those, or maybe.
I think we have lost you for the last 20 seconds.
Okay. I just get a message that my connection was unstable. Am I back now?
Yes. Now you're back.
I look very pale in my face. It is because of all this lighting, and it's getting dark outside. So now all of a sudden, I look like I got like a white face. Well, I'm not so white as the picture looks like. Anyway, I'm glad I'm back, and thank you, Mauro, for saying that. So, coming back on this slide, I think I just opened that slide when maybe the connection was dropped. The example of a SIF, you may have 55 different safety loops, and all the 55 different safety loops will go throughout the same heart of the system here, which is here that safety PLC. And you may have, through all those interpose relays from GMI, you may have all used all the same type of GMI interposing relays. However, here at the end, you may use 2 or 3 or 4 different vendor solutions for your final elements. So we have a generic section here that will be described in that, let's say, generic template for a 1 out of 2 or a 2 out of 3 or whatever it was. However, you may have specific items like challenges, like you may have for those different vendors, different proof test intervals for different, let's say, model numbers for different type of systems at the end of your loop. So your shortest, so what we say here, the mission time of the entire safety implemented function needs to be, and it's hopefully correct, it needs to be shorter than the shortest useful life of one of your subsystems or your assemblies in your safety loop. For every single safety loop, we need also to see that specific model revision number, and if applicable, also the firmware revision number, that needs to be captured also per subsystem in one safety instrumented function. The purpose now of such content, and although I was trying to be brief, let me just go back. Although I was trying to be brief, it's still a lot of bullets, a lot of text, but I will try to capture this in a practical example. If you think about it, a functional safety manual for one of those safety instrumented functions will have to give a description. What is the purpose? What is the description of the functionality being performed, including all the details like the revisions of hardware and or software. I am a instrument engineer myself from in the very early days, in the years of the 80s. Well, we usually would go by would be a schematic. The safety manual would also be like a schematic together with a P&ID. We would actually have enough with that type of information to do the, let's say, some understanding how the loop is working. However, we have to think about the future, that people who are taking those type of information may not be as skilled anymore as we used to be in the older days. I think the people are more skilled today. And even looking at the picture, they may actually, or the schematic, they may have different opinion on what is actually the functionality. So those are items that needs to be avoided, because the whole purpose of functional safety is to minimize human failure. So the better we can describe it, the more detailed we can describe it, the better in the future that hopefully people will not make a human interpretation with a human mistake on the particular functionality. Operational description, limitation and restriction of use, the manufacturer, operator and maintenance instruction, and if applicable also the recommendation for the proof test interval. I give an example. An interposing relay from GMI may have a proof test interval recommendation of 20 years, but your safety engineer that is calculating the availability of that safety loop may ask you to actually test the loop every 12 months or every 15 months. That means the liability of proof testing between the vendor and the liability of proof testing between the reliability proof inside the field is certainly not the same. And out of the top of my head, the ones in the field are always shorter, hopefully shorter, than the ones the manufacturer is recommending. Failure modes and the failure rates, because that will be needed by the person who will do the calculation. The response to behavior in terms of when you are detecting some faults, some vendors will give you some time to go and repair it, depends on the redundancies, depends on the configuration, etc., etc. I will not go through all these bullets because I could probably spend an hour on here. I will jump to the poll question and Mauro will launch the second poll question.
Yes, I'm going to launch the second out of 3 poll question. We will have a last one later on.
Right.
Okay. Can you see that?
Yes, I can see that. In the meantime, I saw a question coming in. I was distracted with the question. Let's stay on the poll. A project needs to comply to the IEC 61511 standard and is using only IEC 61508 compliant devices. That sounds like a very luxury position, if that would be possible. So then the question sounds as, you need per device, a safety manual is required. That is answer A. B, you need a functional safety manual on your CIF or CIF level. And then answer C is both A and B, and answer D is none of the above. So we were creative with none of the above again. Maybe when you click these answers, maybe you click sometimes too quick, but when you read it again, the question is clearly asking, you need a project that needs to comply to the 61511. So by saying the first part of the sentence, already immediately I trigger my mind, because this poll question was made probably like 6, 7, 8 months ago. I don't even remember it myself, but when I read it now, it's clear that well, the poll is finished, I think, Mauro, because I see that the majority we have,
already gave the answer. So I end polling and I share the result.
Which is just the opposite to the previous poll, because now the majority, 70%, is all correct. So that means in this 15 minutes time of a bit of talking, you captured already that in this particular question here, you need indeed both per device. Because look, there is something in this question, and I'm just trying to move the poll window because it's covering my question. The poll question was asking, you need to have a project that needs to comply to 61511. That means you shall provide a functional safety manual, which is answer B. And the second part of the question is, you are using only 61508 compliant devices. Well, by saying only 61508 compliant devices, that means every compliant device shall have a safety manual. So in this particular answer here, you need to have both. Because of the 61508 compliant, you need to have the safety manual per subsystem. And because of the 61511 compliant, you need to have the functional safety manual per sys level. All right, thank you, Mauro. In the meantime, let me read the question before we continue. Maybe it is also applicable. And the question in the Q&A that probably everyone can see is, how is the IEC 61508 and the IEC 61511 linked to the IEC 13849? For instance, is the difference in the application area process control versus machinery system? Well, that's always lovely when people give a question and they give their own answer already. So I love this kind of students always in my training classes. So for the person who asked you the question, you are correct. Of course, the 61508 is here the neutral section in your question. And the 61508 is applicable both for your machinery market, for your machinery directives. Here we have the IEC 63849, which is the machinery systems, whereas the IEC 61511 is for the process industry. And the only thing which I cannot answer clearly in a good quality answer is I do not know myself enough. The IEC 13849, the machinery market, is not my cup of tea. So that is not my cup of tea. So that means that I cannot really tell you a exact answer on safety manual what the machinery system standard would ask you. I can only relate to both the 61508 and to the 61511 because that is my background. And clearly the safety manual content, which is in the 61508, needs to be captured also in the, or is used to give the 61511. So please share the poll link. I get another question. Mauro may be able to fix that. I do not know. It's the Q&A. I know it's the link to the poll. Anyway.
No, I think somebody is not reached by the poll.
Okay.
And this is happening time to time with few people, and it looks
we
like
we have a good answer for that, Mauro. We will blame it on the Zoom platform.
Yes,
Zoom quality that lives all of a sudden somewhere. Let's call this a software feature why you do not get the link. Anyway, to finish my answer to this machinery directive or standard, I'm pretty sure that towards the machinery, there is a similar approach on the safety description and towards a safety manual. I'm pretty sure, but to be 100% sure, I should check the standard, which I cannot do now because I'm now here in the webinar. So I have to excuse me that I cannot give you a 100% answer on the machinery section, since this is not really my experience. Okay, Mauro, let me continue. Well, the continuation is a summary. We have one more slide, and then we will go to the Q&A, looking at my clock. Okay. What can you take away here of this 20-30 minutes talk on safety manual versus functional safety manual? Well, the content, although it is more or less the same, the functional safety manual can only be made by the people who are building, designing, configuring subsystems together. You can never expect that a manufacturer, like for instance a GMI, which is providing you with the barriers, the isolators, the power supplies, interposer relays, etc. GMI can never provide you with a safety manual for maybe your solenoid in the field you are using. And the solenoid provider, manufacturer, can never give you the functional safety or never give you the safety manual for the interposer relay or the barrier that maybe GMI needs to give you. So what I'm trying to explain to you, very simple, is think about when you are configuring and when you are combining all those system functionalities. The safety functionality needs to be described by the manufacturer, normative required by 61508 in a safety manual that is compliant. Sorry, that is a normative requirement for every compliant product since April 2010. But since February 2016, for any system integrator, system manufacturer, or any EPC contractor listening into this webinar that is supplying a, let's say, product solution, a process solution towards the end user, well, that is where a functional safety manual is normative required for every single, let's say, solution compliant to the edition 2 of the 61511. And clearly in both the left column and the right column, there is valuable data in there, and the valuable data is in the safety manual for the manufacturers, that is for the designers of equipment that are actually, or let's say projects that are combining all these items together, but that information needs to be channeled, needs to be tunneled into a functional safety manual towards the end user. And to think about the end user, we have to think about in the future, how will the end user maintain and operate the system in a functional, safe manner. And with this, I'm closing here my webinar before we will go to the Q&A. What can GMI supply you with as services? Well, we do have a range of services, mainly on the IEC 61511, but newly since 2019, we also have a service supply chains for the 62443, which is to do with the security management and security assessment towards your installation, which became a normative requirement from 61511 standard in 2016. We do all this kind of lifecycle support, which I will not go through it too much. One that I like to just mention, because it is my baby here, is called Functional Safety Management. I've been in 2020 because the training was almost like zero because of all this COVID-19 pandemic going on. So one of the main activities for months now is functional safety management and also assessments to the industry. What was my baby before, and I hope the baby will get a new life in 2021, that was my functional safety engineer passion of training for TOV Rhineland. I've been this year, I think my counter is on 6 or 7 trainings. Typically when I'm in November, my counter is at 18 trainings because I do about 20 plus trainings a year. But it looks like this year I'm not gonna get even 50%. So the forecast today is I will manage exactly 9 trainings, including virtual and including some real face-to-face trainings. So we are mixing those, but that's here the functional safety engineer. I think next week, and I saw in the list of attendees, I saw a person who will be next week in my virtual training in North America. We are delivering a virtual training for North America. Next year, 2021, we also will have fundamental of cybersecurity and the security risk assessment training be launched, finally, because we have been tremendously delayed with that Corona, because we are supposed to train the trainers, which finished now in the meantime, to able to conduct that training for security and cybersecurity. I have done an awful lot of customized in-house trainings because now we have plenty of time on our fingers. So we don't mind to do customized trainings for clients specific to their needs. And of course, GMI was my lifesaver for me personally in 2020 to support me as an independent consultant to provide mainly webinars as we do here today. So for you listening in today, it is free of charge, but think about it with respect for GMI. They are sponsoring the industry by paying someone like me to come here and sit here to do just the talk. The safety manual or the SIS manual or SIS manual is in the 4th edition from GMI. That's probably the best book available on the market. Why? Because it is more than 50,000 copies worldwide, for the reason that GMI again is sponsoring the industry to provide you here with a sales story where I wrote chapter 7 and 8, which is the 61511 and the safety requirement specification in. And with this, I will close, I will stop share, and then Maru, oh no, I have to share probably the other thing. Are you sharing the...
No, I will share, Tino. I'm going to share.
Very good, thank you.
And I think you should see already.
I see already, good.
Okay, good. But before to go through the question and answer prepared presentation, I see that we have 2, now becoming 3 questions.
I didn't see that. Okay. All right.
Should I like to go through before or after? It's up to you.
Well, I can read them now.
Okay.
Okay. The first question was, in some safety manual, especially on hydraulic products, you may find proof test interval in the range from 8 to 24 hours. Sorry. I'm just laughing because I'm just thinking 24 hours. Okay. In the process application, this is surely not feasible. Well, I think, again, as I said before, I love people asking a question that are giving their own answers already. How should we deal with that? Well, to be honest with you, that's a good question. That's a very valid question. Every question is always very good. It's always the answer who is always stupid from me. But I'm trying to think about it. The reason when you have a hydraulic product, with a safety manual explaining that, asking you to test every 24 hours, that means the reliability of this product must be very, 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 very unreliable. Because in terms of testing every 24 hours for availability of a product, even if this would be a SIL 1 application, and you would be required to test between 8 to 24 hours, I would say, my goodness, is there nothing more reliable on the market where you can have something a little bit more in the range of maybe weeks or months or maybe a half a year before you have to test it? Because 24 hours, personally, I have not come across in hydraulic such a requirement. So what I would ask you to do, because you will get our emails later, because then I can do some more investigation. If you have any kind of a documentation like the safety manual for this product with the 8 to 24 hours, I would like to see what type of failure rates they are claiming that they can achieve if you would test every 24 hours. It is possible, I'm not saying that. So to give you more quality, you can you can send me a quick email. I will spend a quick 5 to 10 minutes on it, and I can give you a quick first judgment to what I read. Second question, usually the same information discussed in the functional safety manual are covered in the general SRS plus the SIF SRS plus the inspection and testing plan. Do you think this info should be better stored by SIF in the functional safety manual per SIF as the final documentation? There is the risk of redundant information in more than. What is your suggestion? Well, my suggestion would be, if you have it currently today in a general SRS or a specific inspection or testing plan, I would keep it in there. And my functional safety manual would refer to that section. But remember, and as you said, the risk of redundant information in more than one document, that's exactly what you should try to avoid. Assume that you would say, well, we will go to one functional safety manual, and we will keep this functional safety manual up to date. It's going to be a live document for the rest of the lifetime of that plant or that production unit. Then you need to make all the information which was now in your general SRS. I think your general SRS will also always remain, but I'm more thinking about your inspection and testing plan. Well, certainly the functional safety or the functionality will also be part of the testing plan, your proof test coverage, your proof test interval. And typically today, I like to keep this in the safety requirement specification per safety loop. And for sure, your functional safety manual will be having a very close relation with that safety requirement specification. So I would like to end up with two main documents, would be my functional safety manual. That would be my suggestion, where you have the generic section for functional safety, covering whatever was not covered in your general safety requirement specification. I give you a classical example. A general safety requirement specification may be done by the EPC contractor in the engineering phase. Engineering phase will describe you need to have a 1 of 2 loop, etc., but they may not define what type of equipment subsystem you will use. Later on, when you start to buy and when you start to configure those components, you get more information from the manufacturers, but the EPC at the point of the releasing that document did not have. That means the customized data coming from the manufacturers in the customized data into where you configure it, that belongs in your functional safety manual. And that's why my suggestion would be 2. Right, is GMI providing ATEX certified training courses? I will ask Mauro to answer this, type an answer, because it's not for me, that is for Mauro.
Okay, just let me say a few words about that. The answer is yes. It was our plan to run this program, training program in 2020 before the pandemic situation was, let me say, adjusting our plan. So it will be definitely a target for beginning of 2021. So you just drop me an email and I can keep you updated on what's going on, which kind of certification we are covering, because dealing with ATEX, we will cover most of the aspects, some aspects, not all. So let's keep in touch and we can provide details on that.
Okay. Then I got 2 more questions and I have to look at the clock. Then I want to go to the Q&A. Is part of a hazard to ask for the functional safety manual Absolutely not. Nothing to do with each other. Whoever asked this question, I would recommend read chapter 7 in the SIS manual from GMI, because there the framework will clearly show you that's the beginning of your project. That has nothing to do with the functional safety manual. Okay, and the last question, do I need to mention as part of my data sheet to vendor is to ask for safety manual as part of the documentation? Again, what is required? Normative, every compliant device to 61508 shall deliver a safety manual. Data sheet and safety manual are two different descriptions. The data sheet is not known by the IEC. We are here in an IEC specific, let's say, functional safety webinar. I am not here to a vendor related data sheet, which is a typical item from a vendor, which has nothing to do with the IEC 61508. So the vendor data sheet, again, is something specific vendor related. The safety manual is normative to prove that your subsystem, that subsystem from the vendor, is compliant to the safety standard, yes or no. Thank you, Manuel. Thank you, Manuel. Thank you, Mauro. I'm thinking about Manuel's Mauro. Sorry, apologies.
Okay, no problem.
Q&A.
Yes, Q&A. We have this section, which is with we have just four questions for you. This one is so complicated that I would ask you to read it, because otherwise you wouldn't understand the question.
Okay, there are indeed that's quite complex, and I have to put my mind quickly around. Could you please comment safety manual definition 3.2.71? And I know what that means. That's definition abbreviation in section 1. Sorry, in part 1, the normative section of the 61511, note 3. Note 3, yes, there are some subsections in the standard. Note 3, this could be a generic standalone document or a collection of documents. Do you see an improvement to this approach? Okay, Mauro, can you give me the answer or show me the answer? Right. The functional safety manual requirement for a compliant project to the 61511, which is the edition 2, can be indeed a standalone document, which has the benefit you can maintain it easier, because now I remember what the note 3 was saying. I got somewhere, let me double check before I make a wrong statement. I got it here in front of me. Note 3 is saying this could be a generic standalone document or a collection of documents. Okay, now I got the complete answer again in my mind. A collection of documents together will be, again, the fear, as we already mentioned, so we can be short on this. We already mentioned the more documents you have, the more risk it will be to maintain a clear revision and to maintain a, let's say, a simple overview, what document is linked to what document. So the preference would be, in theory, to have a standalone document. It would be ideal. Reality, very hard to achieve. So the more documents you have, the more it can be taken apart and can have different revisions, and the more mess it will be to understand what document do I have to read to have the complete picture. So short answer, try to make it smaller number of documents to explain the same story. The more documents are all split stories, the more difficult to understand them. Okay, Mauro, next question.
So next question is, please summarize key elements in the safety manual which are important to SIF.
Yeah.
What are the parts we should mention on a safety manual, and what are the main items should be included into the safety manual?
I do remember those were 3 individual people, but as all the question is more or less the same question, I thought let's lump them all together. So 3 questions, 3 people. I can be very short because we already explained it on the slides. That means the content in the safety manual, the functions being described, your revision of hardware, software, let's say the revision numbers itself, the constraints and or assumptions on how do I have to use it, what are the constraints and how I have to use that. For every function will be everything like your hardware fault tolerance, the classification, the failure rates, etc. Also the revision numbers of your hardware and software already mentioned. Also the systematic capability, also the safety function integrity, configuration with revisions, etc. when it is towards with the backward compatibilities for your hardware model or your software model, etc. So all that has been explained. That is why we can be short on this slide. It's also in the webinar. Okay, Mauro.
Short question, IEC 61511 is the wrap around of IEC 61508. Then why they are different from each other?
Okay, thank you, Mauro. Well, we partially answered this in the Q&A that came in with the machinery directive or the machinery standard, which this person was referring to. The 61508, we call this like the parent, like the overall, like the umbrella. That's where all the key issues are described on how to design functional safety for anything to do. And the definition is here spelled in the title from a standard. If you want to achieve functional safety with a electrical or a electronic or a programmable electronic safety related system, that's where the 61508 has been made for. That means if I'm designing a element and I got some electrical signal component in there, or I got some electronics in there, or I can program it, well, then I am supposed to follow the 61508 when I make a statement that my equipment functionality is in relation compliant to the functional safety standard 61508. And normative required is here the safety manual. And again, the safety manual has a good purpose to explain all these good items in there. But for the 61511 point of view, the functional safety is to build now a safety instrumented system. As I explained before, you will take vendor equipment and you will combine it, configure it, wire it, install it into a certain fashion, which is free configurable. And towards the safety instrumented system functionality, you shall provide also a functional safety manual. And here in this slide, you see here we have defined an operating company, an end user, a system integrator, service providers, engineering companies, all of which are active in the process industry, being the oil and gas, chemicals, petrochemicals, food and beverage, and pharmaceutical industry or applications. Well, the normative requirement for all those is to use a functional safety manual. But before the operating engineering, before the can use such a document, someone will have to make it. And it's not the vendors here, it has to be the engineering companies, because they are building those type of systems. Yes, Mauro.
Let's go for the next, and this is the last question. Here is somebody interested to know the difference between normative reference and product safety manual.
Okay. Do you still hear me, Mauro? Because I just got a pop-up message that my internet was losing some performance.
I lost you for a few seconds.
And do you still hear me now?
Now you are back, and yes, absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
Good. Let's finish this slide because it's the last one before my internet drops. I don't know why. It's probably evening and there's probably the bandwidth. Too many people are starting to surf now. Normative reference and product safety manual. Well, again, that was several times answered, but I will do it one more time. For every single 61508 compliant device, and again, not certified device, compliant device. Well, that manufacturer shall provide you with a safety manual, because that's a normative mandatory requirement from the IEC standard. Nothing more, nothing less. That means that the safety manual itself is clear a requirement. My advice to you out there would be, any vendor or any product that you bought or purchased after 2010 April that is being supplied to you without a safety manual, I would go straight back to the manufacturer and said, where is the safety manual? If you provide me that after April 2010, there is no way you can prove your compliance without that safety manual. So safety manual is an absolute must to get with your compliant devices. Okay, Mauro, thank you.
Okay, so this is just to remind that we still have, this is the end of the presentation, but just we want to remind that we still have a lot of other webinars running from now to the end of the year. So you just go to if you just visit our website, you see which are the topics which we are covering until that date. And we are working on the program of 2021 with new subjects, or we will repeat some of the subjects which were, let me see, particularly successful. Again, this is the end.
Maro, can I add some? Can I add
yes,
something which
please.
just comes up? Because of 2021, it's very clear that the majority of our training will be provided virtually. What does it mean, virtually? Although we are providing the training virtually, which is actually excellent for the participants because the format is where you have more time to review, to ask questions, etc. But the final exam, as the exam is actually being delivered on a paper version, we are in the process for the moment, but we cannot reveal too much details yet. But we are in the process for the moment that in every continent in the world, we're going to have exam centers that we're going to work together with as GMI. And the exam centers will be either GMI offices or representatives themselves, or it will be one of our partners that we're going to sign up. But we're going to try to have a network per area of exam centers. So physically, you still have to do an exam under a supervision, which we call proctoring. So there will be a proctor who will be supervising for a window of time, but we have the flexibility of that to split the groups into smaller groups towards corona limitation, etc. Because now with the current situation like it is today in 2020, it doesn't look like we're going to jump on a plane next month to start training again. So the rest of this year and certainly the beginning of 2021 will all be virtual. But watch for our webpage on GMI, also my own webpage and of TOV Rhineland. We're going to have a whole range of virtual, let's say, trainings coming up towards certain regions. That's the only thing I wanted to add to this webinar also. Thank you, Maro.
Good. So, and here now, this is the last time we ask you today a feedback. We would like to have your feedback on how we performed, Tino performed, about the content, about the what we delivered, and what I see from your feedback, I should say that Tino, you did, as usual, a great job. So let's just wait a few seconds more to collect the very last.
What you should tell Maro, when I'm not getting an excellent score, you don't want to pay my bill. So
yes,
I'm very thankful that the people are giving me a good rating. Otherwise, CMI would not hire me. Very good, very good.
So again, before to say hello to everybody, I want to just to repeat what we have already said. You will receive the copy of this PDF of this presentation. You just watch us on YouTube channel. You will get also the possibility to review this presentation or this webinar as well as others. And hopefully, as Tino was mentioning, we look forward to see some of you at our virtual training. Now it's something, it's official. It will be very soon official because we are arranging all the facilities to start this from beginning of 2021. So just keep in touch, follow us, and you will have also the chance to participate to this training, as well as since somebody was asking for the ATEX training. Yes, this is under preparation also from our side, and very soon we will be also ready with that. So again, thank you very much to all. It's all for the moment. These are and polling, and this I want to share the result, which is obviously very good result for us. So thanks to all, and have a nice continuation of day or evening or whatever it is, depending when you are.
Yeah, the most important thing is stay healthy, stay well, yes. And hopefully we see you soon again somewhere virtually.
Yes. Thank you
Right.
to all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.